Let's take the first steps in making your Shibori diamond. You'll print out the PDF and select the actual template for the pattern. I suggest this is taped to your worktop. With the kind of weight fabric you'll be using for Shibori, you should find that your fabric, you can see quite clearly through your fabric. So centre your fabric on the pattern. And you actually only need to trace over this top part of the diamond, because we're going to be folding along this line. Take a ruler and a water-soluble pen. I'd also just hold the fabric, because that slips easily too. But as you can see easily through the fabric to the pattern underneath. We'll first draw our fold line and then trace each line of the pattern. And then the other side. Now you're ready to start the sewing. You now have your piece of fabric with the pattern transferred to it. The first step is to fold it in half really accurately along the line, creating your diamond. And then what's a really good idea is to pin that, so you make sure you've really got a sharp line and fold. Then prepare your equipment. What you need is some polyester thread, a pair of scissors, two needles, you need two needles, and the little tags that I talk about, which are just short lengths of double knitting thread. Let's start. You need to thread your two needles with a double length of thread and long enough to do one side of your diamond. And we always work with the thread double. And the little tags are in the end to stop the thread slipping through. And what you're going to do is tie all 4 threads into one and put a little tag in it. And we can now start sewing. So the needles go in at the same point. You want to keep these first stitches quite small. You want a nice sharp line to the edge of your design. Keep sewing right till the end. Then you'll take your other needle and follow your outside line. And there you have finished. Cut them off there. There's your first 2 lines of stitching. And you continue like that for the whole of the diamond. So we'll take another 2 needles. Again, they've got double threads. And again, we're going to tie 1 tag in the bottom of all the 4 threads. And I always just put a double knot in. There we go, ready to start the next row. On this next row, look at your previous row and try and vary the length of the stitches. Make some long ones, some little ones. This will give a more interesting pattern. You definitely don't want them all the same length and following exactly the stitches on your previous row. So you can see that I'm varying them quite a little bit here. And when you come to the end, try and vary where you take your needle out, so that you'll see when you do the pattern that what I want to do is I'm going to take a little stitch here, and then and I'm going to bring the needle, so the top stitch, so here we have the stitch underneath and here we have it on the top. And if you can do that along the edge, this will just create more variety in the pattern. And then we go back to do the other side. Again, vary your stitch length. And there again, I've done that where I've got a stitch, that stitch goes underneath and comes out, and this one is on the top and comes out. Then trim the threads. Here is the completed piece of sewing, all the stitching done. And if you look, you'll see that I've varied my running stitches so that they do not follow the same line in these parallel rows, that some are long and some are short. And that also at the ends, I've tried to vary a stitch above, a stitch below, along the edge. Now we're ready to pull it up. First you need to just generally ease the whole design. Making sure that you can get right to the very edge, very end. And do that for both sides. And then starting in the centre, I always find it better to start in the centre, is that you'll pull each pair of threads, separate them out and tie another tag in them. As you can see, it's a little bit fiddly. and then go to the next row. I do one side at a time and proceed like this until you have all of the stitches pulled up. It can be quite a good idea to trim those which you have just pulled up. Keeps it a little bit tidier. So you just need to make sure you're really pulling right back to where you started the stitching. Separate out the threads. And pull tight and put another knot in. Proceed like that throughout for every single row of stitching that you've got. Here is your completed piece. You've gathered it all up. It'll look like this. And now it's all ready for dyeing. Pop it in some cold water for at least 20 minutes to soak and let the fabric really absorb the water, and then you'll be ready to dye it. I do hope you enjoy the result you achieve.